And the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I've ruined my career. They're never going to ask me back. I just made the biggest possible mistake you can make on stage. This is it. It's over. Hey, y'all. Shane Sams here, back with another Shane Sams show. And I'm excited to talk to you today about overcoming fears and the stories that are inside of our head that hold us back. And I'm thinking about this right now because I took my kids school shopping the other day and I witnessed one of these fears that just overwhelm us in action right in the real world. I know what you're thinking. It was when I got the receipt at Lululemon and the fears in my head when I saw how much money my kids spend on clothes. But that's not it. That's not actually what happened today. This actually is a story about my daughter, Anna Jo. My daughter, Anna Jo, we were going school shopping and she really wanted to get her ears pierced because a lot of her friends are getting like multiple earrings in her ear. And when she was like 1 year old, she got, I guess it's 1 year old. There's no S on the end of that, but 1 year old, she had earrings in. So she's had her ears pierced all this time. She's never had any other holes. And she really, really wanted to like get this done. So we go school shopping. We get to the mall up in Lexington, Kentucky, and we go down to this like ear piercing and tattoo parlor that's in the mall. And, I'm telling my daughter, you cannot get a tattoo, but I'll let you get your ears pierced, right? She wanted to get her ears pierced. So she's going in and she's been excited about this all week. She's been looking forward to it. She's been shopping like where she wants to put the holes. She's trying to figure out what kind of earrings that she wants to buy. And she's just super excited, super energetic, ready to go. My son was with us. Isaac was shopping with us too. So he was going to go watch her get her ears pierced. And my son's girlfriend actually was with us as well. And her and Anna Jo are friends. And she has like 3 earrings in each ear. And she was like talking about how it was, easy and it was fun. And she had all these earrings. And Anna Jo was just really, really excited to do this. So we go in, we fill out the paperwork. And we get to the point where Anna Jo is about to sit in the chair. And all of a sudden, I could see her change. I could literally physically see her entire body change. And I recognized this right away. It was anxiety. Her face got kind of flush. Her eyes were kind of darted around. She kind of like pulled in on herself, like she was kind of protective and like rubbing her hands together. And she went back in this room and she would barely even sit in the chair. And she was kind of stepping back and forth and she couldn't really speak. And I was like, Anna, are you okay? And she just was like, I'm really, really nervous. Like, what if this hurts? What if I regret the decision? Like, what if it's, when they heal, are they going to bleed? Is it going to get on my clothes? Like, is it going to be all scabby and gross when I go to school? And then she kept going, what if it hurts? She just kept going back to that. Like, I think it's going to hurt really bad. And like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I can do this at all. And I just kind of sat there and we talked about just breathing a little bit, or like, okay, breathe a little bit. And we talked about the stories in her head. I'm like, Anna, one, it's only going to be for a second. Like, that's the real life thing that's going to happen. So even if it hurts, and even if it hurts bad, it's going to be over really, really quick. And then you're going to accomplish your goal. You're going to get your ears pierced. And like, maybe there is, something, to clean up, or their ears are going to scab over, but it's not going to be like a gaping wound, right? We know that, right? Like, think about these stories that you're telling yourself. Like, you haven't even done it yet. You haven't even seen anyone do this. Like, you don't even know if any of these stories in your head are even true, but you're letting them stop you from reaching your goal. And then this is how I knew that Anna Jo was truly terrified, right? I was like, what do you need us to do? How can we support you? And she looked over at her brother and she said, I want to hold Isaac's hands. Now, if you have teenagers in your house, if you have siblings in your house, if you have a brother and sister in your house, when it gets to holding your siblings' hands, there is pure unadulterated terror going on between the ears, right? Like, she is so scared that she wants her brother, who she was literally just smacking in the car on the way up there, to sit down and be there for her and hold her hands, right? And Isaac, good brother, good kid, he totally said, I'll do it. I'll sit down. And he sat down, didn't really want to in front of his girlfriend, but he did it anyway. And he sat down and held her hands. So she sits down in this chair and you can just see, like, she's like literally like hyperventilating. And every time that the person would reach in to go, do the holes, she would go, no, wait, I'm not ready yet. And then she would sit there for a minute and she would breathe and she would think about the stories of all these stories in her head. And right before the real world action happened, she said, I can't do it yet. Right. And then all of a sudden, she finally just gets the courage and she says, let's just get this over with. And she holds Isaac's hand, grips his knuckles. I've got an amazing picture of this. If you check us out on Instagram, just look up Flip Lifestyle or look up Shane Sams at Instagram. You'll be able to see this picture I've got. I'm going to post it with this video, if I get my daughter's permission, that is, of her holding her brother's hand. I took a picture right before they punched the first hole. And then right when I heard the click of the thing and I was like, oh gosh, like kind of even I was anxious with all the stories in Anna's head that she was spitting me out. Like I was anxious on this as well. Like right when they clicked the thing, like Anna, like her face, like she kind of like just froze. And then she started laughing. She fully throated hilariously started dying laughing out loud. And then Isaac started laughing. His girlfriend started laughing. Me and Jocelyn started laughing. The girl started laughing that was doing the ear piercing. And I was like, what is so funny? And she goes, that didn't hurt at all. Like the real life situation that she was in was nothing like our fear machines in our brain like creates. And she did the next one. She said, go ahead. Bam. She did the next one. And every hole punch, she got braver, faster. Do it. Let's go. This is no big deal. Her fears in her head were so much worse than the reality. It almost prevented her from doing the thing that she wanted most. And I just thought back like to my entrepreneur journey along the way, all the fears that almost knocked me off the path. And I think about a lot of our customers and people over at Flip Lifestyle in my coaching programs where I just see these little fears, but they're not just fears. They're stories in our head that are always infinitely worse than anything we could come up with on our own or deal with probably in the real life. They're almost always scarier in our heads than they are when we really go through these situations. And it's crazy how we let these stories run wild. We know that the things in our head are often not true. We know that our brains are designed in a way to create a story to keep us safe from the saber-toothed tiger in the forest, or to keep us to pull back a little bit and to always think of the worst case scenario because, like we've evolved to kind of be like, oh, I've got to be safe no matter what. So I got to create all these stories and avoid all these problems. But in real life, when we go and execute, when we do the thing, when we take the action, when we do it afraid, when we ignore the story, or we write a new story in real life on our own, we accomplish our goals. But when we listen to the stories in our head, they can often like hold us back or almost stop us from what we want. I remember the first time I was about to speak and a really big opportunity presented itself. I was going to present my story, our story of how we became entrepreneurs, how we built Flip Lifestyle, how we did all the things that we do. I was going to tell this story to a group of people. And if I told this story well, I was going to be able to join this amazing speaking company. I was going to be able to go out on stage and speak and do all these cool things in front of thousands of people. But I had to first do my story in front of like 100 people. But the problem was everyone in that room was a speaker. Like all these amazing speakers, I was the last one to go. And as I sat there and watched these speakers go before me, I sat and told myself stories like, wow, that guy's way better than I could ever be. Man, that guy got a big laugh out of the crowd. I could never get a laugh like that. Oh my gosh, that was an epic emotional part of that story. Man, I don't know if I could ever generate that emotion. I'm just a guy from Kentucky talking about starting a business. How can I ever live up to that? And as it got closer and closer to the end, I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to back out. I'm not going to do this. There's no way I can step up. The last speaker to go was this legendary speaker that everyone respected. He was a brilliant sales speaker, a brilliant pitch man, a great storyteller, always hit his mark. He'd been doing it for 30 or 40 years, and he got up there and he was just killing it, man, just absolutely killing it. And it's slowly but surely, I was just getting all this fear and anxiety of, I was like, what if it goes wrong? What if my PowerPoint doesn't work? What if I knock everything over? What if I trip and fall walking up to the front of the room? Like all these things in my head, these stories kept churning of everything that could go wrong. And I couldn't bring myself to just think of something to make it go right. The only thing I could do was do it afraid, was do it in spite of the stories in my head because I wanted to write the story and see it happen myself. So I got up and I was so nervous and I walked up there and nobody knew who I was. And I just took a breath and I told my story. And for the next 35 minutes, I had everybody on the edge of their seat. Everyone laughed when I was telling a joke. Everybody was emotional when I wanted them to be emotional. Everyone hung on my every word. And when I finished, all I said was, that's my story. I hope you liked it. And the place busted out in a standing ovation. Everyone started freaking out and going crazy. The guy that owned the company was like, hey, listen, I know everybody that works for me. Don't go start an online business and quit just because Shane told you how to do it, right? Everybody just started going absolutely bonkers. People walked up to me like, man, you were born to do this. That legendary speaker, he walked up to me. This is one of the greatest sales speakers of all time. And he just opened his wallet and he started flipping his cash. And he said, son, I don't even know what you're selling, but sell it to me, baby. That was a great story. And this was this scenario of this happening, the standing, I could have tried to visualize it, but it wasn't the first stories in my head. Like this was the unexpected result. This was the real life result of taking action in the face of all the fearful stories and doing it anyway, because the stories in our head are so much scarier than the stuff that happens in real life if we would just go do the thing. When we think about doing the thing, all the stories of what can go wrong and fear and insecurity comes in. But when we just take a breath and go do the thing, it almost always works out better and works out in our favor. And it got me thinking when Anna Jo was getting her ears pierced, man, how many people out there just let these stories run wild? Let these stories of the worst possible thing that could ever happen stop them from making anything happen in the first place, from doing the thing that even gives you the opportunity to fail. Maybe it does blow up in your face. Listen, I'm not saying that everything always works out. I'm not saying that the ear piercing doesn't hurt. I'm not saying that you don't bomb on stage. I'm not saying those things can't happen, don't happen, or won't happen. What I'm saying is if you listen to the stories in your head, nothing will ever happen. You still have to go do the thing. You have to take the risk. And sometimes they don't work out in your favor. But even the most embarrassing, horrible, worst case scenario in your head, when you do it in real life, you realize that's survivable. In our head, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the line. It's your last opportunity. It's you fail forever and just bury me now because I'm done. But even in real life, when the worst case scenario happens, it's still not as bad as that fear and thing that happens in your head. I was recently at an event. I was emceeing this event. And my worst case scenario happened. My greatest fear, the story that lives rent free in my head, manifested itself into the physical real world. Now, my main traumas in life, like the thing that I avoid the most is embarrassment. I hate being embarrassed. I can literally pull up every time in my life I've ever been embarrassed. I remember in 5th grade when I, passed gas in the front of the room and everybody laughed at me. I remember at when I was a football coach one time, I was trying to show a kid the players how to run a route. And the other coach that was running a defensive back just slammed me into the ground. And I had 100 kids going crazy and laughing at me, right? My worst case scenario. I've lost all respect. Nothing else is going to happen. Like these moments in my life, I can remember and they just haunt me, right? Because I just do not want to be embarrassed. It's one of my worst fears is to be embarrassed, which is hilarious because I go speak in front of 10,000 people, which always has the opportunity for things to go wrong because you're live and in person. And recently I was emceeing this event. I was running this event. I was going in and out, and we were at the end of the day, and everything was going smooth. And this speaker gets up on stage. I've seen him speak before. He's an amazing guy, just an amazingly well-respected speaker, great dude, been a great mentor to me. I have so much incredible respect for this dude. It's actually that legendary speaker that came up flipping his wallet and said, hey man, that's pretty good, right? So this is a guy I love, I have respect for, and I'm waiting for him to finish his talk. And he was getting close to the time, and I was talking to the producer backstage, and all of a sudden we hear the crowd roar. They start clapping, they start going crazy, and I look over at the producer and I'm like, oh my gosh, did he get done a little early? And he was like, go, 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 go check. So I ran upstairs and I looked out the curtain, and there's 3,000 people in the crowd. And this amazing guy is waving at the crowd, and he's going, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the crowd is just cheering. Half the audience is standing up. Like everything's just going bonkers. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's finished. And my job is to go out and say, hey, give him a great hand. He's a great guy. Give him standing ovation. Woo. And then move on to the next segment. That's my job as the MC. so I just think he's done. And I just walk out on stage and I go through the curtain. And I'm like, everybody, give it up for him. Thanks. Yeah, clap it up. He looks back at me a little confused, but he's like, okay. And he walks off stage, and everybody just kind of stops. And then I start talking. I start doing the next segment, and I realize everyone looks massively confused. And I look down at one of the people that works on the road crew, and she's a really good friend of mine, and she's dying laughing. She just like kind of crouched down behind a table, and she looks up at me and she mouths, he wasn't finished. And I was like, crap. Okay, so this is a minor mistake, right? This is worst case scenario. This is like standing in your dreams in your underwear in front of the class. I am standing on stage in front of 3,000 people. I've clearly made a huge mistake. Something's went wrong. Nobody knows what's going on. And I've got to like compose myself and get it. And I did. I was a pro. I was like, got out there, we figured it out, and we moved the show along, we get it right. But here's what happened. That guy had asked all the veterans of the United States military to stand up. And he was waving at them and acknowledging them one at a time, going, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I interrupted this guy right in the middle of him honoring the veterans of the United States of America and kicked him off stage right in the middle of it. So this is literally my brain didn't even come up with this, right? This was worse than the worst case scenario my brain came up with in real life. But what was funny was I realized, I'm always thinking about these, I wake up with the nightmares of being naked in front of everybody in the audience and all these things and these stories that are in my head. But even in that moment, we moved on. Nothing happened. We all laughed about it later. We go to the next event. Everything's fine. Nobody's mad. It just happened. So even in real life, when what we think is the worst case scenario happens, it's not really that bad. The only thing that matters is that we keep taking action in spite of these stories, in spite of those fears, so that we can go out and we can accomplish the things that we want, whether it's getting the earrings, getting the speaking gig, or even just getting back on the saddle, right? Maybe you've had a failure in your business. And since that failure, the stories keep telling you because of that real world action, you can never do it again. That's not true, man. You just got to overcome the fear, overcome the anxiety, and take action in spite of them. They're not going to go away. We just got to do it anyway. So I want to give you 3 tips real quick for how I turn my anxiety into action, how I turn that into energy, and how I, even when the stories are in my head going crazy. And let me tell you something, people. If you ever heard me on a podcast, you ever heard me on stage, I'm a really, really detailed, good storyteller. Like I can create some seriously epic masterpieces in my head that should shut me down. So I've had to learn how to overcome some of the best stories I've ever heard in my brain that are trying to build fear and keep me from doing the things. So let me give you 3 tips for overcoming fear and turning anxiety into action today. Number 1 is acknowledge the fear and feel it. Like when Anna got her ears pierced, I told her just stop and breathe. Stop and feel it. Let it run as wild as you can. You have to remember that these things our brain is doing, these storytelling things that are happening in our head, they're designed to protect us. We're only anxious about things we love, and we love our life, and we love the outcome of our life. Anxiety and the fear is a normal part of your body and your mind just trying to protect you. So acknowledge the fear. Thank your mind, thank your body for trying to protect you, and start just slowing your breathing and breathe in. And once you've acknowledged it like I feel this way, and the only thing that's going to make it go away is if I either do something or I don't do it. But don't do it could create more problems. So the correct answer is feel the fear, acknowledge the anxiety, but take action anyway. Action cures it all. Action ends the story. It's like taking a remote and flipping off that story in your head. If your brain's telling you, oh no, this is going to hurt, don't get your ear pierced. Well, how about this? Sit down, let them poke the first hole. Now the story's over. You've got a real story, real world example of what's happening in front of you, and you have to become present. You have to become real, and you have to do it, right? When that crazy thing happened where it was real life, the story manifest, and I got embarrassed on stage, I was in it. I was taking action. I didn't have time to be anxious. I just had to go breathe. I went backstage. I felt the fear for a minute, and I looked at my next segment and I said, we've got stuff to do. I'm going to take action anyway. So tip number one for turning anxiety into action and overcoming the stories in your head: acknowledge the anxiety, acknowledge the fear, feel them, but take action anyway. So you can pick up that remote and you can turn them off. All right. Tip number two: when you have these stories going on in your head and they're creating anxiety and fear, break down the fear into smaller, manageable steps. You don't have to go take over the world in one action to end the story in your head. You just have to take the next best step. For Anna Joe, she didn't have the courage yet. She didn't have the control of the anxiety yet to take action anyway. So she had to come up with one thing that she could do to move closer to her goal that she was brave enough to do. One thing that she could do to overcome that story. So the first thing she did was sat down in the chair. We're like, just sit down in the chair and just be in the chair. The next thing she had to do was ask for support. So she needed a little support. She couldn't do this on her own. Maybe you need to ask people for support sometimes to shut the storytelling down, right? So she had her brother hold her hands, right? And then the next thing she had to do, she didn't have to get all four things pierced at once. She just had to do the first one. So she focused all of her energy on quieting the story in her head and getting control of the anxiety and fear to get that first one pierced. And once you get past that first step, that first real world action that's not the story in your head, the next step are going to be easier. So break down that story, break down that fear, break down that anxiety into those small, manageable steps, and then do one of them in real life. You know, some people are like, I don't have an idea for an online business. Google ideas for online businesses. That's not the fear of starting a business. Your brain's telling you you'll never come up with a good idea. There's no good idea. You'll never find a good idea. What if you didn't put all that pressure on yourself and you said, dude, I'm just Googling ideas for an online business, and you go type that in, right? So break down the fear into smaller, manageable steps. All right. So tip number one, acknowledge the fear, take action anyway. Tip number two, break down the fear into smaller chunks and take action on the first smallest step you can. And tip three, reflect on past successes where your story was not true. Reflect back on real world examples that counter the story in your own life. Anna Joe was telling herself in her story, oh my gosh, this is going to hurt so bad. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to survive this. Oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst situation ever. And then I just looked at her and I said, hey, you already have your ears pierced. You have 2 piercings right now. And you did those when you were a baby. Did you die? Was it a bad thing? Did it haunt you forever? No. You have a real world example, literally 2 holes in your ear where this is absolutely okay. Look outward for some examples if you don't have any in your life. Like Jocelyn, my wife, she has multiple ear piercings. So Anna, look, your mom's had multiple ear piercings. Isaac's girlfriend was there. Look over here at this example, right? If you don't have a story of yourself, look to other people for inspiration. His girlfriend has ear piercings. Jocelyn, your mom, has ear piercings. These are real world examples of you, of your friend, and of your mom that this is going to be okay. Let's sit down and pierce the first ear. So sometimes it just helps to reflect back and say, hey, I'm going to be okay. No matter what happens, I know that this is going to work out. Like when I had that really embarrassing moment where I totally derailed the show in the middle of honoring veterans, I went backstage and the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I've ruined my career. They're never going to ask me back. I just made the biggest possible mistake you can make on stage. This is it. It's over. But then I remembered back, I've been speaking for a long time now. I've made a lot of mistakes on stage. I've seen other people that I've spoke with make mistakes. I remember one time I was walking up to get on stage with the MC that was going to announce me to come in and speak. He ran up on stage, tripped on the top, and literally flipped onto stage and did a Hapkido roll and jumped up and everything was okay. I've had other moments in the MC job where I've botched somebody's intro, or I forgot to say something, or I did something that didn't make sense, or I got my words mixed up, or I had made all these mistakes before, and they always ask me back. And then other people asked me to come back, and everything was going. So this one thing was not the worst thing that could ever happen. Sometimes reflecting on past successes, especially when the stories are running in our head, or looking to other people who have had success doing what you want to do and saying, hey, they did it, so I can do it. So, hey, story, shut up. So just to recap one more time, the fears in our head are almost always way worse than the reality of the situation. You have to take action in spite of the fear. And when you're in those moments, when the stories are running wild and all the fears are coming forward and all the anxiety is building up, stop, take a breath. First, acknowledge the fear, but then take action anyway. Second, break down the fear into smaller chunks. If you can't do the big step, find the first smallest chunk you can take action on. Action begets action. Do the thing and you will want to do more of the thing. And finally, reflect on past successes. Hey, counter that story in your head that's producing the fear and say, no, when this happened, it worked. When they did it, it worked. And I'm not going to listen to that false story that's causing all the fear that's holding me back. All right, guys, I hope that podcast was helpful for you today. I know I learned so much just by watching my daughter overcome her fear of getting her ears pierced. And I hope that helped you to overcome the stories in your life that are holding you back, to overcome the fears, and to take action anyway. That's what I am all about in my life, is taking action and helping people take action as well. That's why I do the Shane Sam Show every single week. Make sure you're subscribed to the Shane Sam Show so you can check it out every week and you can get more of these tips to help you accomplish the goals that you're setting out to achieve in your life. We want to shut down the negative stories in your head and write the story that you were meant to write and live your life you were meant to live. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you haven't done it yet, we would love to get a 5-star review from you. The 5-star reviews help us get more people listening to the show. And we're always grateful. I read every single one of those reviews. And I'd love to see yours over for the Shane Sam Show as well. And if you'd like to learn more about all the ways that I can help you succeed, whether it's my coaching program, my membership community, or any of the products and services that we have, head over to shanesams.com. We got a ton of free resources for entrepreneurs out there who are trying to earn more and live more and build a life of freedom for their family. And I'd love to hear from you. I got my email posted on that website. Go send me a message and tell me what you think about the show. But that is all the time we've got for this week's Shane Sam Show. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, get out there, take action, overcome the fear. Light it up, y'all. We'll see you next time.